All right.
Cool.
We're recording.
Top of Sam's head is recording.
Yep. That's the top.
So yeah, I don't think the goal is necessarily to solve all the problems, but I've been having a lot of conversations with people, really good conversations. It's a lot of curiosity, a lot of questions. This has been interesting for a lot of reasons, not the least of which is last summer we spent so much time talking about something that was going to happen because it was so crucial that we didn't run into a situation where somebody thought they were coming to Indy Hall, went to the other space and was like, I didn't know we were moving. That was catastrophic. We don't have such a catastrophic drive here. So, you know, that combined with typical summer lull, not lull, but lull. Both. That it didn't make sense to just make all that noise about that when people weren't necessarily going to be paying attention. So the good news is you know, the space that we're sitting in is more or less done. A couple of things left to be done. The track heads have not come in yet, so that's why we're sort of sitting in the dark. And we've got a install baseboard and a handful of other small things. And I'm working with the landlord on what our exact timeline for occupancy is, both what we're required to do because they obviously want to collect rent, but I'm not going to pay rent for space that we're also not using. So there's that. So the big question is how we use it, because that drives a handful of things. On a very tactical sense, I see Ariel walking over, so I'll hold my thought.
Please hold the room for Ariel.
Yeah.
This is a fun crew.
Yeah.
Oh, just wait.
It gets worse.
Yeah.
You'll have the shirt off.
Should I sit on the floor?
Oh, you look very tan on the neck.
That's got to be a euphemism of some kind.
So I was just saying, Ariel, you know, that compared to last year, where like every week was here's a thing, you know, here's the date, all these things. This has been a little more ephemeral and a little more in the background because it was, you know, it's not disruptive. It doesn't need to be. Doesn't need everyone's attention, but we're at the point where people now can see it, it's visible. So a lot more questions about like, well, what's next? What do we do? What's it gonna be? How do we use it? And then also I've been having really great conversations with folks with some more specific hopes about how we can use it. And actually you and I have spoken about some of these things in the past, Ariel, you know, I think the big theme is having been in the current space for almost a year, among the biggest differences is the old space, for as wonky as its configuration was, it allowed for natural zones.
Yeah.
This space doesn't really do that. It's sort of all one big zone, sort of wraps around. This creates sort of like a natural division. So the question sort of is how do we use that to our advantage?
Yeah.
And to sort of piggyback on that, a lot of conversations around, you know, if there are people who spend a good chunk of their day on the phone or on video calls, or people that are here, you know, whether it's 2 people or 6 people, you know, crosstalk affect the people around them. And so, you know, there's been an ongoing conversation over the years about how we support really the 2 opposite ends of the spectrum, which is I'm in Indy Hall, I need to get work done, and that includes other people, as well as I'm in Indy Hall, I need to get work done, and I don't, like, noise distractions are a problem. And I think using this as an opportunity to play with zones a little bit makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
And everyone has had basically the same idea or question, but it's looked a little bit different. And that it really is tailored to what it is their personal preference is most of the time, which makes total sense.
Yeah.
So, you know, my I don't want to say resistance, my hesitation, and what I've seen challenged in other co-working spaces is once you designate an area as the quiet area, like the quiet car on a train, it ends up becoming somebody's job to police it. And that doesn't feel right for us.
Yeah.
But I think we can be smart about communicating expectations. And again, there being this sort of physical delineation helps a bunch. And the fact that this is new space. People don't have a habit in this space.
True.
So it could be something as simple as a visual threshold to cross and be like, this is a spot where taking a conversation at your desk is uncool. Realistically, taking a conversation at your desk anywhere is uncool, but this is where it's really uncool. So that's been the biggest recurring theme is how do we facilitate that? Beyond that, there's tactical components of that. I think taking a pulse of like who in our community has those preferences, so we have an idea of a ratio. Are the people that would be here more if they knew that there was a place that allowed them to work they need to work? And that connects to sort of my last thought, which is very related to this, is this additional space does cost more money. So we're looking to boost membership. And so I think being able to make clear what the configuration of Indy Hall, what the expectations of Indy Hall are now, maybe has the ability to make people go, oh, I didn't realize how good that could be for the kind of work that I'm doing.
Right.
Or I thought it was not going to work for me, but that actually sounds really useful. And that's a combination of people who have been members and have had to leave because it hasn't fit or have had to adjust membership level, but also recruiting new folks and having these conversations outside of Indy Hall. So that's sort of like that's a widespread arc and as much sort of front loading as I think makes sense for a conversation like this. Ultimately, my goal would be to leave here today with some, like, what are the next steps?
Yeah. So the thought, and correct me if I'm wrong, is the thought to not like make this the quiet space, to make this specifically a quieter workspace.
I think so.
Interesting.
I think it has
my
the
thought,
potential.
and again, it's like my specific work style.
Yep.
I think of that space as very quiet. I think of it like I can't make a noise. I can't have a phone call. So if I need to make a phone call, I'll go into a room if I need like perfect quiet, or I'll go into the kitchen or this area because I know it's like I'm allowed to talk over here. So I'm actually, it's so funny. I think of that as like quiet. I can't talk. So I was like, oh, maybe this could be like the coffee shop space, and this is where people can like have more noise. But maybe that's not.
It could go. I mean, it could go.
Yeah.
It could go either way. I mean, ultimately, again, it comes down to the ratio. So for like logistical perspective, this space is approximately 1/3 of the total of our current space. Okay. So if we have if the general sentiment is only some people need a place where they sit and they can be at their desk and it's okay, then maybe this becomes the noisier cafe-ish type space, and that allows that space to be relatively quiet. And I think you're right. I think that space is relatively quiet. I think it comes down to certain people with certain work needs and styles where they just don't have an alternative at this point.
Something else that I think it's important to mention about this space is there's going to be designated team space, right? So that conference room is like you can't see them, there's a conference room over there, trust me. That's like a designated conference room for a particular team. Through the doors in the back is for a team.
Yep.
And I think a lot of the, like, where you sit is generally a little quieter. When you get closer to the windows on the 4th Street side, it gets a little louder. And I think it's mostly because of teams. So I am curious how it'll shake out when there's more of a designated space for some of these rooms.
Yep. And I don't think it's, I don't want it to sound like teams are the problem. I think what we've come to realize is that teams need something that is different. And the truth is that's just as true for individuals who, a part of your day is getting on a video call with your team. And some people do get up and take it to a phone room or to one of the breakout tables, and that's great. I think we've not done as good of a job since we've been over here communicating that etiquette. So not everyone realizes that they're hearing a one-sided conversation, even if they're relatively quiet, is still distracting.
Right.
So I think a candid conversation about that. I don't think anyone's being malicious, and I think people are just trying to get their work done. So drawing those lines. The other part of it's so funny, like the acoustics in the space, like if we used the old space the way that the current space is being used, it would be terrible because
It'd be unworkable.
Yeah, it'd be unworkable. Whereas like the same amount of conversation is only annoying to the person directly next to you or across from you or maybe right behind you.
In this space, you mean.
In our current space, which is still not great. Like sound doesn't travel very far, which is a good thing. But I think it also gives people the impression that, well, it's okay to have a conversation here, not necessarily realizing that, yes, it doesn't echo through the entire space with the people around me, maybe being nice and not saying anything, but are trying to get work done and are frustrated.
Yeah, it's so funny because I keep thinking, and again, you have the higher level bird's view of what everyone says, so I have like little context, but I keep thinking that not just for what I feel like is missing, but just has a sense of co-working, like there's not as many like so these tables over here are collaboration tables, or like more like, like the not traditional model of co-working, but we have like all these separate desks, and like we have not many like bigger tables. We used to as the old space, but I don't feel like, I guess people use these. I don't know, but it's also so small, so if I need to make a phone call in here, I'm also so nervous if there's someone else working, like I don't know if they came over here for quiet time or if they came over here for chat time, but I can just imagine like.
Yeah, that's expectations again.
Exactly, I think that's a good thing to say. Yeah, because if there was like an area in here where it's like there's music is a little bit, maybe, I don't know why I'm trying to like mimic a coffee shop, but I'm sort of thinking like that's where I feel sometimes if I go to a quiet coffee shop, I won't go in a video chat. But if there's music playing, I will, because I know it's okay and like, there's already things happening. So, But here there's no place like that. If I need to have a chat, I isolate myself.
Yep.
But it'd be great to not have to isolate. I don't need to.
Right.
I don't need to go into a private room. I don't mind doing that.
Right.
I don't
Yeah. Well, and I think that's, you have that sort of rubric in your head for what makes sense, and I think some people have their own rubric, and then some people don't have a rubric at all. I think we can do a better job of helping people, like, hey, you spend part of your day on a video call or talking to the person next to you because you have to get work done. Like, here's 3 things to ask yourself,
I'm wondering if there's some sort of creative shorthand to make those conversations easier. Because even as someone who works here and is responsible for like keeping an eye on everyone, not policing, but like keeping an eye on things, I still have trouble having that conversation of like, hey, I can't get work done because you're having a loud conversation behind me.
Yeah.
And I know we had the coasters, the co-working working ones. But yeah, I'm curious if there's like a really simple, accessible way to say like, I don't know. Maybe.
Yeah, I'm thinking of different ways that signal out in the rest of the world. Like one of the things that I thought about was, and I don't think this is analogous, but it maybe gives us some lateral thinking so we can think in different ways and how we create perimeters and expectations. But Adult Swim was a thing that happened at the pool, and it signaled something to you that made you know what was about to happen, and you also knew that it was only going to be for a small period of time or something like that. And so I'm trying to think of ways that if it's not spatial, is it temporal? Does it have to do with an environment or the things that people need? Is there like a hierarchy of the work that has to get done? Because one of the things that strikes me as I think about it now is the fact that currently in our now Indy Hall, we don't have any parameters for the spaces other than the people who are in the space.
Right.
And if there wasn't a team there, then maybe that would be a super quiet space. But because there is one, now you know that it's definitely not that. So we don't actually have any like built infrastructure so much. We have some, but not as much. So it's not universally observable. And the reason I'm thinking about that is, Ariel, you said that's kind of your quiet zone over there and you know what not to do. And that is super interesting because the perspective we received this morning was that like, this is the loud zone. I'm in the loud zone. Yeah. And, the only difference is, who perceives it, and that's it.
Yeah. Yeah, but I think, whatever it is, if it's like, I love Adult Swim. It's a really funny way to think about it. But have some expectation that's like everyone knows, it's like part of the onboarding, would be, super, super helpful. The reason I don't do chats out in the workspace is because I won't say I got chastised, but I sort of got chastised by another member. So it was like members policing each other, which was good, but it was done in a way that I was like a little bit scarred by.
Yeah.
And then I got mismatched reactions from other people around me being like, just don't worry about it, you can talk here. So I'm like, so now I'm just like afraid to talk in front of anyone, so I like run away, which is ideal also, because it's, to know that this is a place I can go. I don't need to ask anyone's permission. I don't need to worry about it. Like, I'm allowed to be here.
Yeah.
So that was a cool thing to have.
Well, if we're talking about like zones, like going back to that, I think in our old space, it all really depended on the people. So like I remember the coveted window spot in one of those like branches of that H shape. Somebody was there and someone else was like, I know they're gonna talk. And like, this is our quiet area and I don't wanna be rude, but like, I know they're gonna talk. Is there any reason we can have them not sit here?
Yeah.
Which is definitely not great. But I think the reason people assume it's gonna be quieter is because it's a nook, it's somewhere small. And I think like I'm less likely to have a loud, normal conversation in a smaller space, like a subway car or like, if I was in a conference room without a door or something.
If that, I mean, it sends
Then it
it's a signaling thing.
Yeah.
It's like you're more, you are in, especially if you're in there with a limited number of people, like you're aware of who it's affecting. Whereas again, it sort of ties back to right now, like you don't really know how far it's potentially.
Right. And I know I like to sit near the kitchen-ish so I can kind of see what's going on since that's sort of a central hub. But like, I think the assumption is a kitchen's not going to be quiet, which is, I think, a correct assumption.
Yep.
So it would take like a little bit of like a change in terms of, the fact that there's like clear aisles right now or like walkways. Like it could be a little bit of like changing that up to make like the kitchen sort of like expand a bit more than just the kitchen nook. Just an idea. If that's supposed to be the loud space, to have more loud space around it. For when the kitchen tables are full, that is clear, like that's like collaborative space, it's for chatting, and then to make this like very clearly a more focused area. Because right now, it's like the way I think of it is that there's like 2 tables in the kitchen or the 1 table in the kitchen, and then maybe here that I can talk. But to make it very clear that there's like more talking space, and then like, clearly.
We also don't have to have it like 1-on-1. It's maybe feels a little cleaner to do it that way, but I don't know how realistic it is to do it that way, because the other thing I'm expecting is whenever we put desks or couches or whatever we're doing in here, folks are going to want to shift around just because they'll probably want a new spot or they'll want new people to be around or whatever. So like, even if we're like, okay, this is going to be the quiet zone, if there are some people that need to have those conversations that move over here, it's not going to be the quiet zone anymore.
To the point about self-selection is the name of the game, right? And the old space had those relatively smaller zones where you could self-select based on who was there. And so it was, honestly, it was so much self-policing, but people that were quiet tended to find themselves in a quieter area. People that are noisier tend to find another. I don't think that there is any, right now that's not clustered, except for in a couple of cases, because it has been done very intentionally, and it's visually sort of all one place. So I think there's an opportunity. I think maybe one of the easiest first steps is like a quick little survey, like a radio button, super easy survey is like, do you like a yes or no, phone calls, video calls, are you here solo or are you here with other people? Just to get a sense of how many people are like making noise versus are mostly in their computer. That's not even a ask of what people's preferences are. It's an ask of what they do and what they need.
Yeah. And
then based on response, we get a rough ratio. Because honestly, I have a tough time telling. And every time we talk to folks about wanting a quieter area, there's a sense of know that I'm not the only one because I've talked to other people about this, but I also don't know how many aren't willing to speak up.
Right.
So the simplest thing we can do is create the invitation, be like, I don't think anybody wants to be surrounded by other people talking all the time. And I don't think anybody wants complete silence all the time either, otherwise they wouldn't be here.
Right.
So I think we can reverse engineer those preferences a little bit back to what people do and help them be around people that they need, but then also say, all right, well, those are what the rough ratios are, then maybe we need something that we don't currently have. You know, something between a phone room and just a cluster of tables where it's okay to go take a video call because there's other people taking a video call there and you're not worried about talking over each other. That doesn't work for everybody because not everyone's voice carries the same. I know I probably wouldn't work for me. But there's other people that want to be on a call where they only just have a few, you know, things they've got to say and their voice is fairly soft.
Yeah.
And if they're around other people who are doing that could potentially be okay.
At risk of feeling like a cubicle, I'm thinking about the tester tables. If you're taking like the GREs or whatever, it's like a big table, but it's got like soft dividers. So that way you feel like you're alone, but you're not in a stuffy phone room.
Yeah.
Yeah, and also I don't want to discount the ability for us to use visible signs or visible cues to let people know what the culture is generally in a space, without us having to put up a stop sign and saying this is exactly how it is.
Yep.
You know, hinting toward what's in this area. This is more normal. Generally speaking, people come over here for this thing. And trying to figure out a language that we don't have to play with absolutes, because, you know, that's not what we're doing, but we do also want to encourage people to be able to make a choice, and they can't necessarily choose something if they don't know that it's guaranteed to be that thing.
I think along with that, something that I don't know how to execute exactly, but I think would be overall beneficial is, I mean, we've talked about how like the etiquette has changed in the new space. I definitely don't want to police this, and I definitely don't want to say have-tos, but something like, hey, we've noticed that like it's been harder to have conversations when something's bothering you, or we want to just have more conversations in general. Here's a good way to do that, or like here's what we can all agree to do, or something like that. Like just simple, like my easy example is like Joe and I will get upset about something and we'll just want to talk about it forever. And we have an agreement that like when it gets to be too much, you go, okay, I can't talk about this anymore. Like something very simple where it's like, okay, we can agree to have this conversation. Or like we can agree to like, here, okay, I'm being too loud without it feeling like you're a terrible person because you're loud. And like a kind of community-wide reminder, the same way we need reminders every once in a while to be like, hey guys, the dishes are bad.
Yep.
You know.
It's also interesting because like, it's funny you bring up the dishes. There's a bunch of things that, in terms of like the caretaking of the space, that we don't have to do anymore. And I'm not gonna lie, it's awesome. On the flip side, I think that the collaborative caretaking of the space was a subtle mechanism for knowing who's around you and who you might be impacting.
Yeah.
And we kind of lost that. And that's not to say that we need to like do something specific around like cleaning or something like that. But there's, I don't know, that we had a mechanism that worked really well. That mechanism went away. We haven't really replaced it with something.
Right.
Other than like light kitchen caretaking, which a handful of people really do step up and do a little more than everybody else, whether that's emptying dishwashers or, you know, wiping down a table or whatever it is. And that's all really, really appreciated from folks who do it, whether it's once or do it on a regular basis. But I think, you know, it used to be that general mess in the space was a canary in the coal mine for other problems that were maybe less visible. And that's not having that mechanism has let us get to the point where the crosstalk and noise levels is really wearing on people. Not that it's been invisible, but it's been tough to read the early warning signs because our early warning signs kind of went away.
Yeah. And I don't want to enforce reinforce an idea that I have. I can't necessarily back up, but I do think with the inclusion of more teams being visible at Indy Hall and having more groups get together and being like pods of people who talk to one another more time, more crosstalk, and that being visible because we're all on the same floor. I think the general mess that large groups of people make has become normalized. And that when you see it, you're like, oh yeah, this is just what that looks like. This pod looks like that. That desk is always taken up by stuff. And that means in other areas, it's less incredible or rare. It just looks like, oh, this is the state of things.
Yeah. So, to keep us on track, so I know we want to talk about boosting membership. We're at 12:33. I guess a next step would be that survey.
Yeah.
Super easy to do.
I think that's an easy win, and also like making sure that I think it's going to give us some insights into some detailed insights into something we already know.
Yeah.
And something that we can actually do with it. I think a broader conversation about etiquette. Like I said, I like everything that we've said. We don't have an answer other than an agreement of like, we need to do a better job of communicating etiquette. I don't know. But I think opening that up as a brainstorm, a standalone brainstorm, makes a lot of sense. Neil, you've been quiet.
You didn't choose.
I was chewing.
Ah.
Mm-hmm.
Was it delicious?
Yes.
Good.
It's big cake. Yeah, what kind of kept coming up for me was like conversations that we were having like 2 years ago. It feels like about how to have quiet cars.
Yep.
And I feel like I don't have a ton of like brilliance on this. It's just, this will kind of always be an ongoing conversation, I think.
Yep, I agree.
And it also reminds me of like literally my second day at the hall, at a town hall, and like Ed had been on the phone all day, sitting next to, I want to say, Kara. And Kara like pleasantly called him out in the town hall as like, he did a really nice job of saying, hey, I'm going to be on a bunch of calls today. Is it all right with you? You know that I have a loud voice.
Yeah.
And it was a very open and honest, quick conversation, just checking in with people.
Yeah.
So.
No, I think you're right on.
Yeah.
I do encourage that in tours. So if folks are like, I have to take phone calls, I show them the phone rooms, I show them like the spots you go basically for your video calls,
yeah.
And say like, and you can always have a conversation. I've had people literally hearing that go like, no. So I think it is the open space aspect of like.
They say no to what?
To like the idea of like, you can have a conversation with people at your pod. What about the people behind you? What about the pod next to you?
Yeah.
What about the people in your like area that aren't just at your seating pod? So I think zones in general will help.
Yeah.
And the other thing that you said, Neil, that I think is important in terms of expectation setting is that this is it's not I think we're talking about it in terms of like noisy and quiet, but it's more like a continuum, and it is an ongoing thing. It's like right now things are mixed and not great. If we can delineate the continuum and help people find the right spot for them, it'll be better. It's never going to be perfect for all the time for everyone, but there's room to improve. And always be improving. Makes a lot of sense to me.
Yeah. Cool. I think a lot of folks have we've actually had a surprising amount of new members this summer for being in a summer lull, and the engagement's relatively low in the summer just because people are away and stuff. Like we haven't had a ton of events. We haven't had a lot of lunch and learns, whatever. So that pendulum will swing the other way, hopefully. Almost definitely. Mm-hmm. And it makes it easier to feel more like you're in a community rather than just a workspace.
Yeah. So on the topic of calls, I have to go take a call in a few minutes.
Okay.
In a very quiet area of Indy Hall, so there's no one.
Thank you for stopping in.
Yeah, always happy to brainstorm things. Bye.
Yeah.
just feels like a voyeuristic picnic date now.
Yeah, it's just, yeah, I'm glad you're in the frame now, Sam. I was feeling kind of.
Oh, I took a picture of me alone in the Zoom room just because I thought it was funny.
So the other thing, so that's all, I think that's ongoing work. The other thing related to making this space viable is growing membership. And doing that in a way that is sustainable. I think we've seen in the past that like massive influxes of new members all at once can be real challenging. But I also think that we've learned a lot about what kinds of ways groups of people can join together. And one thing we haven't done in forever is something along the lines of a membership drive. The closest thing to it we did was the prepayment. And the thing they have in common is we set a concrete goal by a certain date and said, this is what we're trying to accomplish. And the difference here is, you know, I think it's useful for us to think about who's already in our near community, who's maybe stepped away in any of these conversations or a reason for them to come back, or they're just coming back at the end of the summer, or they've been away for a while, they've been thinking, basically like who's on the fence, and we can tip the scales in them wanting to be here, wanting to come back. That can include a number of things. That can include, I've had a bunch of great conversations about new kinds of additional membership, nights and weekends being one of them. And I've had some really great conversations about that being slightly different from nights and weekends and more of the framing that has come up the most often is something like a clubhouse membership, where it's a flat rate like nights and weekends I was proposing. So you can come in evenings and weekends, after hours, things like that, but also one where you feel comfortable stopping in for, you know, a brief visit during the day. It like takes away some of the anxiety of, I don't want to have one of my days taken up just because I stopped by and I'm not really sure. So I think
how I live right now.
What's that?
Which is basically how I live right now.
Right. I think there's some definition around that, but I think that's the kind of thing that, I mean, I've had a bunch of emails with people who are curious about Indy Hall, and I'm honestly curious about co-working in general, and they're like, this seems like something for people who need a place to work, but I have a 9-to-5, or I'm on site with clients, and like, this doesn't really seem to cater to people that are outside of the business hours. And I'm like, you're correct. And what's most interesting is like, that wasn't historically the case. It just sort of became the case with the mechanics of our old building. Now we've got some new tools at our disposal, but I don't want to overlook the trust and the social component as well, because there's nothing worse than coming in here and being the only one when you came here to be around other people.
Right.
So there's that. There's and maybe there's another level of membership we're not even really thinking about. Oh, we lost Neil.
Neil sent a message over before he logged off. He said he has to go to something.
Okay. It could be.
We could also give some love to night owls a little bit, get that revitalized, because that'll open things up for our not traditional 9-to-5 people.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Also, like, I feel like I've had a lot more conversations in the last 6 to 9 months with people who are running businesses and just don't feel like they have people to talk to about running a business, whatever that business may be. And even that's on a spectrum from people who are like, I run a business and I run a team and I don't really have any friends or colleagues I can talk to about the challenges of that. Or I run a small business and like none of my friends, like all my friends have jobs, so they don't really understand.
Right.
So there's that.
We can also, I mean, something that we basically have the model for, we just would need some organization, is just extend the brain trust model to kind of solve that problem.
Right.
So you get a membership to the community, and then you get a membership to the Indy Hall Trust, whatever it's called, for what you want to talk about for managing teams or something like that.
Yep.
this is a little outside of the box, but it's something that I want to say is so I don't lose it. One of the things that we've been talking to Evan about a lot is the social media stuff and visibility of, Indy Hall or the brand or whatever. And it strikes me that one of the things that we do well is we show pictures of people doing things at Indy Hall and Indy Hall members. But that means that people who have never come to Indy Hall only see that Indy Hall is filled with Indy Hall members. So I know one of the ways that we could improve outreach is by exposing the fact that people come here who are not like bought into something or club members already, because I fear someone who is working at home who doesn't think Indy Hall works for them might keep scrolling through our Instagram and only see Indy Hall members doing Indy Hall activities, which might be like singles doing single group events where they're all, and they think it's only for a certain group of people.
Right.
So I wonder, just to stretch out the way that we communicate with people who are not here yet, how are ways that we can appeal to people who haven't bought in?
Yep, I agree.
I think we also, along those lines, need a little more buy-in from members of sharing stuff.
Yep.
It doesn't really matter what it is. Because there's a lot more complexity than we can show, like you were saying.
Yeah, I think a list, coming up with a list of ways that people can help, would help that.
Yeah.
And
we can also really look into some of the things in our neighborhood that we learned about through Brain Trust, actually legitimately connecting with Menagerie and saying, send people over here. Let's do a shared discount, that kind of setup.
Yeah, coffee shop bars.
Just straight up introduce a little bit of that infrastructure, and that would be really cool.
Yep.
And that's along the lines too of talking to folks over at Menagerie or OCF and saying, how long do you want people staying in your spot? Do you want them to work there all day long? Not that we're in the business of getting people to leave your place and then tell them that we have coffee for free, but it maybe would help you have some turnover so you can welcome more people inside and never get packed.
We also have a lot of new neighbors.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I also think that it's totally, so there's two sort of remaining thoughts that I have. One is that it's totally not outside of the realm of acceptable to be like, hey, support your local independent co-working space.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
In the same way that people do restaurants. That could be,
I have a friend that says PBS pledge drives. So she can talk about Great British Bake Off.
Alex, before we lose that thread, support your local co-working space. It means support 200 businesses.
Yeah. Yes.
So that's important.
Yep, I agree. I agree completely. And a whole ecosystem around that. The other thing is, I think you said pledge drive, and I really think that's the best way to think about it, is like we need, like right now there's no event around joining. When you think about this as an event or even a series of events around joining. And obviously not around joining, but it's about answering questions, about connecting people with other people. Like, what are the things that we know make people want to join? And open house gives us one of those experiences, but it's really just one. And so what does that look like?
So maybe a pledge drive week where we could go old school on it and have people be able to call us up or check a certain kind of website, just like the website we set up for Paul's, but this one is specific to how to pledge and be a part of, either join member at a discounted rate or to be somebody who is just a supporter of the local co-working space, and really go hard on that.
I'm thinking of like all of the blankathon episodes of different TV shows. Between the two of us, we could book a lot of variety acts and do like some sort of ridiculous event, like an all-nighter or like a, I don't know, something really strange just to bring people, especially, okay, here's a thought. With this big honkin' open new space, it would be really easy to do some like live events in here and not have them in people's way, have it really easy to set up, you know, I don't know what exactly it looks like, but we also have a lot of members that do lots of different things.
I think that is such a cool idea.
And we could like get bird magic.
That is such a cool idea, and we can use the Pledge Drive week as a showcase of our community.
So that's the thought that I wanted to get to, which is like one of my ideas for. So it's, you know, back to the questions, like if somebody is on the fence about joining, can we give them something that pushes them over the edge? Obviously, just a specific time and place to do it in person could be part of it. A financial incentive could be part of it. I was also thinking about something that would include the community, which is like, if you sign up on this day, you get to pick from this, you know, pick from this menu of experts who are already in our community who could potentially help you with a problem that you're trying to solve. And you can get 15 minutes with, you know, Stefan or Rob to talk about a legal thing, or with Matt Calhoun to talk to you like algorithms or math or programming thing, or puns, or, you know, it could be related to your business or not. I'm almost thinking about smashing it up a little bit with Give and Get, basically, where it's like taking the professional date component of Give and Get and marrying it with an incentive to join by a certain date, like a credit with somebody who's already in our community. And the benefit of that is like you joining and you have an instant connection to somebody here who you know went out of their way to help you, which I think is kind of neat.
Yeah, I could run an improv communication workshop or team building workshop or some shit like that.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and what I was thinking of is like a week-long festival in which every night features an event, including, let's say, Saturday and Sunday, and each event is hosted and executed by a member. So one of them is a little tiny Ignite, one of them is stand-up or improv, one of them is salsa dancing, one of them is music making, so on, and treating it like it is both a pledge drive and a festival.
So you saying festival reminded me of another thing that I had in my head from earlier this year that I completely forgotten about until you just said it now, which is the Mutinery crew did something similar to what I had in mind, which is a freelance festival. And so tying back into our conversation about the balance of, you know, teams and individuals versus independent, or is it teams versus individuals, not versus, but you get what I'm saying.
Yeah, I do.
And, you know, really boosting the local independent ecosystem. You know, whether it doesn't matter whether you're remote or you work for another company, or you're a freelancer or a consultant or an entrepreneur, but they all have stuff in common, right? And so thinking about something that really caters to that crew, you know, the reverse job fair idea, where members of our community as well as members of the outside community could basically sign up to have a station where people, because like you go to a job fair and it's companies with jobs and then everybody walks around and wants the job. I imagine flipping it on its head where members of our community as well as other creative professionals throughout the city can come and have a little station where companies that are trying to hire freelancers instead of full-time employees can go around and be like, oh, I met a person who does a thing. Look at all these people that we could be hiring on a contract basis. I don't know of anything like that happening in Philadelphia, and I think it could be that's the kind of thing where, you know, if the cost to be a display independent is low for Indy Hall members and a little bit higher for people that are not members, that could be an incentive to join. Also like a revenue generator in general. But then also back to your, like tying that in with what you were saying before, Adam, about, you know, Ignite type talks, or like Dan Green giving a talk about literally any other topic that Dan Green wants to talk about, or you know, Jess Ponziano giving a lightning talk about her first 2 years of being pushed into freelance, but then finding out that she like was able to build a career in a field that she didn't think she could, and now she's got a full-time job doing that, but she's able to do it remote.
I think an Indy Hall Ignite would be a super easy win.
Yeah.
Just super easy. The other thing that the reverse job fair makes me think of is the tool you were building. Remember this like job database or like professional database?
Yes.
Because it's nice to be able to
I
put
think
those
together.
in. Yeah.
Yes. Are you taking notes on this, Sam?
Uh-huh.
Yeah, I'm taking some notes also.
Or I'll share my doc. This is good that we're doing this even though no one else is here.
Hey, we need to take the time for it.
Yep.
Also.
Well, because that's been the issue for, I know at least you and I had at work. Like, this is such a brain switch that whenever we start to talk about it, we're like, wait, I'm not ready. So.
But like thinking about this, thinking about producing a week-long scenario where we're doing a pledge drive or a showcase is really exciting to me. This is really cool, and I love the fact that we can fold a membership boosting event into something that's generally going to be good for the body of Indy Hall and outreach at large, not just prepay your membership because we want to pad out the next month or so.
To be a little realistic about that, though, we sorely need it not to be the two of us because you and I are never here at night. Or we are like maybe once or twice a week. Yeah.
Well, that's why I'm thinking of the way that I do put Ignite together, or the way that Give and Get got together, and thinking about the way that we could gather a group of people who would want to make something special together. And I'm thinking more along the lines of, what if Indy Hall did this during Old City Fest, and you walk off the street where a lot of fun, interesting things are happening, and then you walk inside and a really amazing thing is happening here too. And there's a committee of people who put together Old City Fest. And there's people who want to show off Old City because they only run one business, but it's still, the whole neighborhood is important to them.
Yep. Yeah. So yeah, how it's executed is definitely, there's got to be some team effort
for sure
for that, without a doubt.
So let's break this down into some bite-sized steps so we don't get overwhelmed.
Yep.
So for backtracking, I can make a type form survey, super easy, just click, you're done. We can also have those printed out in person and like really bug everybody, put it in announcements next week, like make it the thing. And that kind of starts to take care of what do we do with this space. What is one thing we want to try for boosting membership? I mean, the reality is 2 members now know that this is something we're trying to do.
Yeah.
So my thought is the first step is
say, hey, we've started brainstorming around this. Here's a couple of ideas that we're thinking about, but this is really just the beginning.
Something else also, we have show and tell coming up, Sam, and I feel like we could definitely use that forum to start planting some seeds and having conversations like this one.
I don't like using that for that. Only because I'm happy to point people to something separate, but I kind of like that as being so member owned. That's why I always hesitate when you and I talk about filling in if somebody drops out or something. I really feel strongly about that being a member time for members to talk about their thing. And it's not that our thing doesn't connect to them, it obviously does, but that feels a little bit like a whack over the head when you're expecting to watch a talk about yoga and you're going to hear about business. I hear you on that. Although I think you and I don't share much about ourselves within that format. In fact, I'm trying to think of the last time you or I did.
What I would say on that, and I agree with you completely. My question is what other vehicles of consistent attention do we have that are equivalent? It's a good one.
Yeah.
So I think to throw it away entirely is potentially a mistake, but I'm with you entirely.
Yeah. I'm not talking entirely. I'm talking more of like a tweak on that where it's like end of show and tell, save 5-10 minutes. By the way, we want to have show and tell is a Thursday. Tomorrow we're having a meeting on membership, bringing some more
I would
members
even,
in.
and I would even say like maybe we put it in intermission, just because we have people that show up late and people that leave before the end. But I would say like
Sure.
if we treat it like an intermission and more of like a capture attention, can you be a part of, or like there's got to be a specific thing you're asking people to do that they can do whether or not they come to a thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think also there's nothing wrong with like just a group as opposed to like let's generate some ideas here, just because there's so many people that are not physically in the
Yes.
space.
Yeah. No, this has to, this can't be tied to in person being here because most people aren't.
Hello.
Exactly. Another thing that is related to all of this, and I'll have a little more ideas from her in terms of timeline, but I think a refresh of the website will help a lot.
Mm-hmm.
So Mariah's taking the lead on helping with that, and I basically we talked about what is absolutely crucial, absolutely necessary to create the building blocks to keep building.
Yeah.
Right. So it's not going to be all the things ever, but these are the essentials. And one of the essentials we chatted about the other day is some photography. I think getting that going ASAP is another, like, that's a pretty big one.
Okay.
So I shared that list of like what came up off the top of my mind. We can open up that brainstorm, but I also don't want, I want to move quick on that.
Is that in a paper doc or is that just the screenshot?
It's.
I know you sent it to me twice.
It's in a Slack
I see it.
post above that.
How do I? All right, I'll figure out how to save that just so I don't lose it.
You can pin it to the side.
Amanda, to catch you up, we have split our meeting into two conversations. And the first is what to do with this space. So our actionable action after this is we're going to do a little survey of like what people do in our space, because right now it's, if you are more of a quiet worker, it seems like everyone is loud. And if you are maybe a little loud, you probably maybe don't even notice that you are. So the survey would be like, do you take phone calls or video calls at Indy Hall? Yes, no. You know, do you need to work with other people while you're at the hall? Yes, no.
Mostly to get A, to let people know that we're thinking about it, and B, to get a sense of proportion.
Yeah.
For the first time since we moved in, we have a clear delineation of two different zones, whereas anything else would be a little bit of a mental break.
I mean, I would love to see a spot that was designated for more heads down quiet work.
That's
even
literally
time
the
out.
leading conversation.
Yeah.
No one's saying I need a place to be noisy, but people definitely need it as functions of their work. A lot of people are saying I need a place where I know I can go and be set up, and I'm not going to have to change my location 2 or 3 times to find a place quiet.
Yeah. Or I'm not going to feel bad if I have to take a call.
Right, which makes so much sense.
I know that I booked the huddle room for myself once a week to have like a no distraction zone to do my bookkeeping.
Yep.
So.
Yep.
Stuff like that. The second half of the conversation is new space means we could use some new members, bringing folks in. We were talking about like adjacent communities, businesses, people that are not served right now, that sort of thing. And then we've had a whole list of brainstorming of just things to get some more people joining, not just coming by, but like signing up.
And things that are simultaneously mechanisms to bring the community together and do stuff together.
Yep.
Not just a promotional event, but a thing to really highlight who's here, and something that even if nobody from the outside showed up would still be a fun thing for us to do together. I think or not just a fun thing, but like valuable, whether it's related to our businesses or connecting with other experts or solving a problem, whatever it is.
Yeah.
So that's sort of the two main categories of today's chat.
Cool.
Yeah.
That all sounds good.
Good. Glad it resonates.
Something else we don't have on our list of bringing people in is, we could easily do more takeovers. They don't even have to be as formalized as National Mechanics was. It could just be like, I'm going to Spruce Street Harbor Park. I know there's internet there. Who's coming with me? Let's like make a day of it.
And I think the more of those that we do, we really need to be proactive in like press outreach.
Yeah.
It's like, if the only people who know about it are people who already know about us,
Right.
we're
That's not doing
doing
anything.
like 20% of the work. The other 80% is like a thing is happening that is a reason for Philly Pen or technically Philly or even Philly.com to write about us.
Or to come work with us.
And the reality is, and this should be on the list as well, is I can start doing some press outreach and be like, hey, Indy Hall's coming up. Like we have, we can write about our 11th year, the expansion. Like that's all low hanging fruit too.
We should also talk about a birthday party.
Birthday party should be. I reached out about the potential to do that at Fringe after Fringe Fest is over, but it's tough to get them to talk about anything while they're about to go into Fringe season, which is like, I totally get it.
Yep.
So that might not be the best venue, but it was a good idea, and I'm thinking about if that is going to be tough to move on, what other options do we have?
Mm-hmm.
What about Urban Axes?
I actually haven't been yet. I don't know how big it is.
I don't either. I can hit up my friend.
My
Do it right now.
if we're gonna do it, I want it especially because we skipped our 10-year. I want not that I want all the people in the world, but I want to be able to do a big event.
Yeah.
And not one where like it's uncomfortably crowded. One where there's room to like breathe and hang out and have a conversation.
What about where you got married?
Maybe John might let us. It's an option. It's not. I want to say it's not an option. It is an option.
The mini golf place is really good. Yeah.
Also thinking about places where the effort is proportional. So like the more raw it is, the more we have to do to get set up versus being able to roll into a place and do a takeover.
Yeah.
So there's that. But a party planning committee would be super helpful.
Yeah, agreed.
And Megan Steele has offered to help with that as well. Just want to jot that note
Cool.
so I don't forget.
Good to know.
Cool.
As we wind down, I'll have to hop off.
Yeah, I have to jet as well.
Mhm.
I see you shared these notes.
Yep. In Staff Lounge.
Thank you, Sam.
I think so. So if we're going for actionable, I'll make that survey today.
Drop me a link and I'll put together something to send out tomorrow that can then be signal boosted in announcements and such.
Yeah. Okay.
Sweet. I like it. This is good.
Thanks for joining us, Amanda.
You're welcome.
You're great. Cool. Awesome.
All right, gang. Thank you.
Thank you. Enjoy,
Yeah.
boss. Say hey to Timmery.
Will do.
Let's just talk about Adam now. Still recording.
I'm stepping out for coffee.